Hello, everybody. So, when we finished off our last read aloud, we were talking about how the players wanted to join the league, and Dr. Neuron said that they couldn't because they didn't have a coach. But then the Conundrum brothers showed up kind of like last minute and said that they will be their coach. Chapter 7, Boo Camp. If we're a real team now with real coaches, Bolt asked the night after the monster rally, why are we still practicing here? Carl wondered the same thing. This was their first official practice, and the coach's conundrum had told them to meet back at the haunted bog. I'll tell you why, Coach Wyatt said. Spies. We'll be safer from their prying eyes here. Besides, we live right there. Coach Virgil pointed to their mansion, so our commute is wicked. Kid monsters are too soft these days, Wyatt said. We need to get the boo back in you. We've got to show the other teams you're tough. He tossed a base on the ground and stood next to it. Imagine this is second base. You, he said, pointing at Dennis. Try to steal it. Dennis snatched up the base. He darted off and hid behind a stump. Virgil called him back and explained what it meant to steal a base in baseball. Let's try that again, Coach Wyatt said, putting the base back in place. As you run toward the base, show me you're not afraid of it. Or me. Or anything. Bolt went first and ran down an imaginary baseline. Coach Wyatt let out a scary yell. Bolt stopped right on the spot. His leg that had belonged to the ballet dancer went up and did a little spin. Maxwell was next. He gagged on his wrapping before reaching the base. And Patsy screamed her head off, literally. Her head rolled down the baseline. All right, said Wyatt. I've seen enough. Practice is over. Carl and his teammates looked at each other. This was a baseball practice? When they met up again the next night, the team trotted out into the heavy darkness that covered the haunted bog. There were shouts from Dennis and Maxwell. Someone had dug pits where first and second base should be, and the holes had spears sticking up at the bottom. The pitcher's mound had been replaced with quicksand. If J.D. wasn't a ghost, he would have drowned. Who did this? Mike asked. Carl sniffed the ground and followed the scent to werewolf tracks. They led back to the road. I'm sure it was Al, Carl said. It's not just the werewolves, Carl, Patsy said. The zombies left this in my mailbox last night. She reached into her pocket, and she pulled out a bottle of the best glue ever. You know, ha, because I always fall apart. And I got this, Dennis said, taking out a little toy baseball bat with legs and a head on it. They call me Bat Boy. But aren't you? Becky asked. Well, sure, Dennis said, stiffling a bit. But it's all how you say it. The sounds of bickering came across the bog, and the conundrums were arriving. What's up, guys? Virgil asked. Before anyone could tell them about the notes and the sabotage, Wyatt barked. Gather around, team. I have your positions figured out. After the conundrums tacked up the list on the pus bag tray, monsters rushed to read what positions they would play. J.D., pitcher. Carl, catcher. Patsy, shortstop. Bolt, center field. Dennis, first base. Eric, second base. Maxwell, third base. Beck, right field. Mike, left field. That leaves our guy Al. Al doesn't have a position. Carl couldn't believe his eyes. Catcher? He hustled over to the conundrums. Coaches, he said. I think there's been a mistake. The list says I'm catcher. Wyatt squinted at him. That's right. No mistake. But I was hoping to be pitcher. Wyatt frowned. I keep hoping my brother will take a month-long trip far, far away. But that never happens either. It's just, I'm not the world's best catcher, Carl said. You've seen that. We haven't seen what you can do, Virgil said. No one has. Carl waited for him to say more, but he just grinned. Wyatt scoffed. Just get out there and play. Work on pitching signals with JD. Hitting every second of it, Carl swapped mitts with JD. He put on the catcher's mitt, the mask, and the chest protector. Carl crouched as if he were behind home plate, and JD started throwing pitches. They had been working on their signals for just a few minutes when, ding, 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 Carl's phone started ringing from the sideline. He trotted over to read the screen, and his body went limp. What's wrong, Carl? Patsy asked as the team gathered around. Carl held up the cell phone. It's an email to all of us from the JC Monster League. It's the season schedule. Uh-oh, Dennis said. Aren't we on it? No, we're definitely on the schedule, Carl said. And then he took a deep breath. Our first game is tomorrow night against the Werewolves. We haven't had very much time to practice. And I have a game tomorrow night. Chapter 8. Take me out of the ballgame. The night of the season opener had arrived. The stadium swept, the programs printed, the hot dogs steamed, and the baselines were drawn. And Carl was hiding in his backyard fort, sprawled on the floor. When his mom called him down for lunch, he told her he'd eaten bad roadkill. He said he felt sick, and if it was okay with her, he'd just stay up in his fort all day. Luckily, his dad was out of town on business, so he didn't have to make up a story for him. Carl's cell phone beeped. Another message from Patsy. She and JD had already texted him about 30 times. Where are you? Game starts in 20. He typed back. Not coming. Stomach hurts. This was true. His stomach was in knots of nerves, but not because of roadkill. Carl knew the werewolves would destroy the Scream team. He'd done everything in the past week to get on the werewolf team, not get run over by it. And what was worse, coaches had made him the catcher, the worst position for him. Everyone knew he couldn't catch. He might as well tie his hands behind his back and just wait for the world to laugh at him more. When his cell phone beeped with another text, Carl turned it off and laid back down on the floor under his poster of Wolfenstein. Carl pulled his baseball cap lower so he couldn't see the poster. He couldn't take it anymore. Carl decided to head to his room and go to bed. Tomorrow, when he woke up, the game would be over and so would the Scream team. His dream would be finished, but at least his life could go back to normal. As he climbed down from his fort, his paws crunched down on something at the bottom of the ladder. It was a note. He unfolded it, and he read it. So he's laying up there in that fort, feeling pretty defeated. When he climbed down and decided to go to bed, but he found this note. Hey, Carl. I got home early from my business trip. Sorry you got a stomach full of bad roadkill. Figured I'd let you sleep. I'm going to the werewolf game anyways. I'll talk to Coach Powers and let him know we'll have to have a substitute in for you. Dad. Uh-oh. Carl's stomach suddenly felt a lot worse. His dad was going to the game. He would find out the truth from Coach Powers that Carl wasn't on the werewolves. He had never actually said he was on the team, but he'd let his dad think that the practices were with the werewolves. That wasn't all. The word popped up from the note. Substitute. Carl felt even sicker. Sure, the werewolves had substitute players, but the Scream team didn't. There were only 9 of them. If Carl didn't show up, there wouldn't be enough players, and his team would have to forfeit the game. Carl had to get to the stadium. He tried to find a way to fix everything, but he might already be too late. It was 11:50. The game would start in 10 minutes. Any player that wasn't in line with his team at midnight wouldn't be allowed to play. He ran to the front driveway, hopped on his bike, and started pedaling, but screeched to a halt. The 8 other members of the Scream team were biking down the street towards him. What are you guys doing here? Carl said. Patsy shrugged. If you're not going to play, neither are we. This whole thing was your idea, Carl, Dennis said. I've changed my mind, guys. We have to play. Too late, JD said. We can't get to the stadium on time in our bikes. As Carl racked his brain for a solution, a van pulled over, and the conundrum heads popped out of the driver's side window. Did somebody call for a cab? Virgil grinned. Wyatt snapped. You always take the words out of my mouth. Oh, come on, Virgil rolled his eyes. Go ahead and say it again. No, it's too late now. The Scream team left their bikes on Carl's driveway and piled into the van. Carl sat next to Patsy in the far back seat. How'd they know to come to my house? He asked her. I called them and told them to meet us here. I had a feeling you'd change your mind. Wham! They were tossed against the side of the van as the sharp turn went, and then the other way. The Conundrums both had shortcuts they wanted to take to the stadium, but they only had one set of hands. Take a left, take a right! The van swerved back and forth, tossing the team, but ended up still going straight somehow. Speed up, slow down, and the brothers shouted as their feet pounded on the gas and then on the brakes, and then sometimes looked back at the same time. Back and forth, forward and back. Oh my gosh, I don't want to be in that car. Still, when the van bounced into the stadium parking lot, they had 2 minutes to spare. The clock over the entrance at 11:58, and they sprinted inside. Carl didn't dare look at the bleachers, where about 2,000 monsters, all of all kinds, waited for the game to start. His dad must be up there watching. Carl could only imagine how mad he must be. The werewolves were already lined up on the field. They were in their sleek. They looked very sleek in their perfectly sewn black uniforms. Al mouthed the words, "Hide!" He didn't realize he'd stopped in his tracks until Coach Wyatt gave him a nudge. "Hustle, Carl!" The first note of the anthem played just as Carl stepped into the line with his teammates, and the Scream team was about to play its first game. Sounds like absolute chaos. Chaos.